Do you drive on the left-hand side of the road or the right-hand side of the road? Recently, a subscriber, g'day Johnny, wondered why it is that some countries drive on one side of the road and some drive on the other side of the road. And that's the subject we're going to look at today. About 75% of the world drives on the right-hand side of the road, meaning on cars that drive on the right-hand side of the road that has two-way traffic, the steering wheel is on the left, called left-hand drive. And on roads where you drive on the left, like we do here in Australia, the steering wheel is on the right, called right-hand drive. Of course, if you ride a motorbike, none of that applies. Though most of the United Kingdom and their current colonies, including Australia and New Zealand, drive on the left, it begs the question, why isn't there a more standard road system for driving? The answer isn't as simple as it seems. Throughout most of history, long before the invention of the car, almost everybody travelled along the left side of the road because that was the most sensible option for feudal, violent societies. Since most people are right-handed, swordsmen preferred to keep to the left in order to have their right arm nearer to an opponent and their scabbard further from him. Though driving a certain way on the road started off mostly as a custom, it was heavily influenced by the majority of cultures having a larger population of people with dominant right hands. In ancient Rome, Romans would drive the chariots with their dominant hand, right, so the whip in their less dominant hand, usually the left, wouldn't whip the other horses passing by. The year 1886 is regarded as the birth year of the modern car, when German inventor Carl Benz patented his Benz patent Motorwagen. Cars became widely available in the early 20th century. One of the first cars accessible to the masses was the 1908 Model T, an American car manufactured by the Ford Motor Company. The company's founder, Henry Ford, was a big influence in the American driving customs, as he built his Model T with the driver on the left side of the car, meaning drivers would have to drive on the right side of the road so the passengers could exit the car on the curb and not into oncoming traffic. Most countries followed America's lead, such as Canada, Italy and Spain in the 1920s, Eastern Europe in the 1930s and Scandinavia in the 1960s. Once traffic regulation laws started becoming more common, most countries chose right-hand driving, while in 1835, Britain and its colonies made left-hand driving mandatory. Another heavy influence, France's Napoleon helped spread right-hand driving culture in Europe. After World War I, more countries were driving on the right-hand side. Besides Britain and its colonies, there are 163 countries and territories that drive on the right, and 76 that drive on the left. Many of the island nations are former British colonies and drive on the left. Japan, thanks to its railway creation with aid from the British, had their trams built on the left-hand side, which heavily influenced their driving laws to drive on the left-hand side of the road. I've been lucky enough to drive and travel in quite a few countries in my time, some of which I took video. I remember my first time driving a left-hand drive car was in Hawaii, in a then brand new Ford Mustang we rented. It took me about an hour to get the hang of it and start feeling comfortable. On our first trip to Vanuatu, I learned that as they used to import cars from all parts of the world, some were right-hand drive and some were left-hand drive. Of course, this non-standard situation caused a great deal of confusion, so it was finally decided by the government at the time that the very next car to come off the ship would be adopted as standard. And as it turned out, it was a left-hand drive car, so driving on the right became the law. I know that every time I've returned from a left-hand drive country and drive my own cars, I always accidentally use the indicator stalk, or blinkers to us, and turn the wipers on by mistake, but after a while I get out of that new habit. Quite a few years ago, I founded the Australian Corvettes Association, which meant that I've also driven left-hand drive cars here in Australia, which I find is an odd feeling, but they are usually classic or special vehicles and, depending on different state laws, may have to meet certain criteria in order to be registered for road use, for example, like 30 years old or more in Queensland. Also, when older cars, typically imported from the USA, came to Australia that weren't made specifically for our country. They often must first be converted to right-hand drive, which is an extremely expensive and complex exercise. There's a huge market here for cars like the new Ford Mustang, and unlike the Chevrolet Corvette, Ford finally started capitalising on that market niche a few years ago, and you can now buy them already right-hand drive from the factory. Well, I hope you found that bit of history interesting. So which side of the road do you drive in your country? Comment below. Well, being a coffee lover, as most of you would know, I'm heading home to try some South African coffee now. So cheers, and I'll see you next time.